Hello, and welcome back to the SPIRE podcast. So today is Easter Monday, day after Easter. You will not be listening to this day after Easter, so we'll be talking a lot about Easter stuff, and you're going to be like, Easter was like so last week. But that's fine, because Easter's a long time.
Easter would technically be this week.
It is this week.
For people listening.
Easter is 50 days.
The day
That
of
is true.
Easter.
The Easter season is 50 days. The Easter feast day is 8 days. Easter octave, it's like 8 days of Easter.
I just learned all about that yesterday.
I learned about it today when I got here.
It's so cool. But yeah, so we'll be talking a bit about Easter, how our Lent went, and all of that. So I actually have an introductory question to you guys. Was Lent a success?
For me, it was, yes. Because I went into it with the intention of... I think my focuses for the last few years has been not to look at Lent as like, okay, what do I have to give up? And just checking a box.
Mm-hmm.
But realizing that I'm meant to like learn something and grow in something, grow closer to Jesus. And so this Lent was a big learning experience for learning to let go of the way that I saw things and I feel about things, mm-hmm. and to trust Jesus' word and let that be the determiner of my reality. And so it's sort of been like a dying of myself, but then a new life in a sense, in a real way, because the whole way I see the world has completely changed from the start of Lent to yesterday, especially yesterday. So it's been pretty fundamentally life-changing, mm-hmm. and more so than any other period of my entire life.
Well, that's awesome.
So I would say it was a success. If the goal of this is to grow closer to Jesus, then yes, I am closer to Jesus in many real ways.
That's really cool.
I'm going to say yes, it was a success, because if I don't say yes, then I'm going to just beat myself up over the ways that I didn't do as well as I wanted to. But I think the biggest way that it was a success for me is that I, in a lot of ways, was kind of forced to look a lot of my imperfections in the face and be like, mm-hmm. I don't know, come face to face with my imperfections in a lot of ways. And I think that even though I'm not necessarily going to say that, you know, my life is completely changed from Ash Wednesday, I think that it was a good kind of stepping stone to get there, because it kind of helped me to see a lot of things. Part of it was definitely like doing Exodus and giving up social media and trying not to drink as much caffeine and whatever, like those kind of things.
I thought he was going to go with alcohol.
Yeah, just trying to cut back on the alcohol.
Yeah. That was the weirdest thing about Exodus, as we were talking about that earlier, is this is going to sound so bad, but there were some times where it was like, man, I really just want to drink alcohol right now. And it's not because like you have a dependency on alcohol. It's just because you don't normally drink it anyway, but then all of a sudden you're going to like family parties and stuff and they have alcohol and they're like, here, have a drink. And it's like the one time you're ever going to drink, but you're like, I can't.
And I feel really bad, you know, telling Father, no, I can't, I'll have water. And he's like, but I have this like fancy wine. And like, sorry. And by Father, I mean like priest Father, not my dad. My dad just like, you want a margarita?
Father, son.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there were a lot of ways where I was able to see kind of my dependencies on certain things, whether that was caffeine or social media or whatever it was. And I was able to start to kind of break those dependencies a little bit so that I'm at least moving closer to being able to just... Because when we talked about like what is Lent and everything, we were talking about being able to just trust that your desires for whatever those things are giving you will be fulfilled outside of those things. So I think that it definitely was It was very eye-opening in a lot of ways, and it was a good kind of like get myself moving in the right direction. Because I already felt like before Lent, I think I kind of talked about this, where I felt like I was already kind of moving in that direction, and this was just another push where it's just like, I know I need to get better in these areas, and it's just more motivation for me to do that. So not necessarily super life-changing, because it's just a continuation of what I was already trying to do, I guess. So
Did you fall asleep in class a lot because you stopped drinking caffeine, or was there a big difference there?
I wanted to. That was one of the big ones. Was I was so tired all of Lent. Like, I have never. There were some days where I would tell my mom, I was like, right now I'm more tired than I think I've ever been in my entire life.
From not doing caffeine?
Yeah, just like I went from having an energy drink every single day without fail to maybe I would have one a week, like on a Sunday or something. And I would wake up at 7 on a Tuesday morning and not even like have the energy to get out of bed, and I can't find the motivation at all because I had been so dependent on it that I literally couldn't get myself out of bed.
Did that change at all throughout the course of time?
It definitely got better over time. I think I'm probably still not 100% like I have.
That's an energy drink right there.
It's the first one. Second one. But
it's only been 2 days.
Well, I had one on Easter because we were at a family party, and I was tired and I wanted to be present and whatever. And I have one today because I was at school all day and I'm here. I'm going to go play volleyball. But I'm not planning on drinking one every day. I'm going to keep it at like one a week if I have a busy day or something. But I definitely have noticed myself needing it less as time's going on, which is a really good thing because it doesn't make my body feel great and it costs a lot of money too.
Oh, so. I don't want to think about that much.
So do you feel better on caffeine or worse?
Like if I drink caffeine, I don't necessarily feel better. I feel more energized. It's just like it gives you like the boost of energy. But it's not like I don't drink it because it like makes me feel good. Makes me feel good. I would always drink it because I was so busy with school and work and everything that I just felt like I wanted to have energy and more energy than I had. But another Exodus thing was getting 8 hours of sleep, which I was not doing. And I started to do that. And that combined with not drinking as much caffeine helped me to have a lot more just natural energy, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I didn't need it as much anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, contacting with sleep, that's where you actually get your energy. Yeah. Which I don't understand sleep, but we can get into that some other time. Whole, 2-hour long conversation. What is sleep? I don't know, man. But, no, the reason I asked why Lent was a success was I was wanting to get, you guys' take on, the intuition of what you think of is, what is Lent for? Mm-hmm. And it's now that I went through Lent, did I succeed in what Lent was for? And I think you guys did fairly good in that because a lot of people just it was a complete and utter failure. I said I would do this thing and that thing, and I didn't. I remember me going into Lent, I was doing all of the Exodus stuff, and so I'm well, I don't want to add too much stuff on. So I'm I'll do a daily journal thing, tied in SPIRE. We can get back into that. And then I was Lent's all about time of penance, and 3 things you do for penance is prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And I was I should do some almsgiving stuff. It's service opportunities. I did not do any of those. And so I'm it's the sort of thing, it's it wasn't a regular daily thing I could do or something I had set up. It's something I'm take those opportunities when you can and reach out for them when you can. And I didn't do that. And so that way, mine could be considered failure. But as you were saying, it's the whole point, it isn't just check the boxes saying I did this, I did that. And so it's while I would have liked to have been a bit more generous or gracious with my time or this or that, I have noticed things changing throughout Lent. And it may or may not also just vibe with the normal fluctuations of my life. Sometimes I'm like this, sometimes I'm like that. Mm-hmm. And if you're not watching the video, that made no sense to you. But just
sometimes he's up, sometimes he's down.
And sometimes I'm inside out. But yeah, so particularly leading up to Holy Week, I was I really want to just I kept in my prayers being I want to to have this be something special. It's like I want to actually be able to focus and direct my thoughts towards you, this Triduum, as opposed to some other times I'm like, oh, I'm just doing school, and it's like, okay, let me read this book or watch this show or this or that, and it's like, oh wait, Good Friday's over. Oh well, and it's like, but to actually like enter into the sacredness of the Triduum, and then the holiness of Easter, and so that was really cool because like. Was a Good Friday for the Good Friday service was somewhere just really cool, just to behold the word of the cross. Mm-hmm. There was it was packed church, and then there was only one crucifix we were doing for the veneration of the cross, and so it took like 40 minutes. Dang. But it was great to see all the different people. It's like sometimes there were kids like would dance around the cross, and then the parents like, no, get out of there. But like I feel like this Triduum, I entered a bit more fully into it. Mm-hmm. And then the Easter Vigil is beautiful. It is hard to keep energy during we only did 4 or 5 readings and then the gospel.
Where'd you go?
St. Theodore, my family's parish. And so it was beautiful. There were 9 baptisms.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And like a lot of confirmations.
He said that there was 20 people that came.
Yeah,
into the
20
church.
people through the RCIA. So 20 people total. So it's like 9 baptisms and then 11 non-baptismal confirmations.
Okay.
There was like two full families that did baptisms, like all their little kids, and awesome. It was so cool to see, and a bunch of the joy in people's face. And also, Father Purcell is just so excited about that. He was like pouring the water over people's heads for the baptism, and he was just like grinning. He's like, I baptize thee in the name of the Father. And he's just bouncing around. It was so fun. And so, yeah, so was Lent a success? I'm like, yeah, because we're preparing ourselves for Easter, and Easter came. And so even though we did not do everything we may have wanted to, unless you did, I don't know, Fulton seems like he did a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. Good stuff happened to me. It wasn't me.
The purpose of Lent isn't just to check off the boxes, as you were saying, and I think it was a really interesting question, because I could have been like, "Did you do all your things? How were your observances?" In which case, that's depressing. It's like, well,
yeah. I'm pretty sure it was us that was talking in the very beginning about how Lent is not a self-help program, mm-hmm. but that's kind of like. If you're coming at it from a secular perspective where you don't believe Jesus is actually real and actually loves you, then it is very easily confused with a self-help program. Yeah. And I think actually a pitfall that probably a lot of Catholics fall in is not realizing that this is about a relationship. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like if I'm in a marriage with someone, because ultimately we're meant to be in a marriage with God. If I'm in a marriage with someone and they say that they love me and they're trying to show me that they love me all the time, and then I have like this stuff that I do that sort of takes away from my ability to like see how much they love me, then in restraining myself from going down those pathways, I'm more open to this love in this marriage. Mm-hmm. And so that's like ultimately what Lent is, mm-hmm. And I think that's been something I've tried to really focus on without, fundamentally, like only focusing on that, because that's the point. So it's like there's fasting you're supposed to do, and alms, or not, what do they call it? Mortification or whatever. Okay. I've always felt like that has a bad rap. I don't really understand how that plays into, like I never looked at that. It never felt like I was opening up to love. Mm-hmm. By denying myself of things, because I felt like I was just denying myself, which was painful.
Yeah. Check my phone real quick. I just heard it buzz.
It was that was his phone. But
turn it off.
Yeah, the mortifications, like sometimes it can just feel like I'm just giving stuff up for the sake of giving it up, and it's like this hurts and it's stupid, and fine, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. But like with some of the things that I've given up in a mortification way. Sometimes I'm like, it just makes me think whenever I think about it, it's like if I'm taking cold showers, I'm like, it's a little too cold for my liking. I don't really like this. And it's like, well, then why am I doing this? And then I think, oh, because Jesus. And it's like, I don't know what this does and how this helps me. But like in that moment where I'm like, I want warm shower. I'm like, well, I'm not doing this because I want to grow closer to Jesus. And just in some simple way, it's like, well, now I'm thinking about Jesus and how I want to grow closer to him. And that's one way I think mortifications are useful, in that because they hurt, they make us think about it and make us be like, why are we doing this? And then the purpose of it all is Jesus in some way.
But if you're going to give something up, why would you... Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It also depends.
Well,
on
like if you're going to
the
get, because
person.
I guess I'm thinking, no, yeah, I would not want to. It's good to give things up and to let things go, but then it's good to have them back.
Yes.
Afterwards.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand, like, let's say I give up chocolate,
Chocolate.
but then I'm just going to have chocolate again. So my Lent could technically be a success
And that
if
you did
I
not
didn't eat chocolate. But then if I am not actually more in love with Jesus by the end of it, then it wasn't even worth it for me to do.
I think that's like when we were first talking about it, the first week of Lent or before Lent or whatever that was kind of the whole thing that, because with little kids, for instance, they might not understand. Like my 8-year-old sister, she might not really understand that you give something up or you do something, you add something maybe. And it's supposed to help draw you closer to Christ, but it's still good for them to understand the concept of like self-denial kind of. But as you get older, that's why like it's so cliche, but when everybody says like don't give up chocolate for Lent, it's because if you're an adult and you're like, I'm just not going to eat chocolate, and it's like you're just doing that because like that's like
Fairly
why?
easy for a lot of adults.
Yeah, and so the whole thing I think we were talking about even before Lent was just, if you're going to give something up, then you should pick something specific to you that you know is potentially distracting you or pulling you in the opposite direction, or maybe you have like a disordered relationship with whatever the thing is. Maybe that thing is chocolate. Maybe you eat like 15 Hershey's bars every day, and you know you can't walk.
Is that too much?
We might need to talk after this.
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
I'll
But
check
no,
under
what
your
you're saying
bed for
with
that.
like the disordered, what you're saying with the disordered affection, I think, is what you were getting. And it's like if you give up chocolate and then just eat chocolate and nothing's changed, then it's like, what was the point of it? And it's like, yeah, because if you have a disordered appreciation of chocolate and you give up chocolate, it's like, well, no chocolate. And then you retain that disordered affection throughout Lent, even though you're not eating it. And you go back and you're just like, well, nothing's changed. Then, yeah, it didn't really do anything. But if at the end of it, you're like, I now appreciate chocolate. Like, I do enjoy eating it. And I do enjoy what it like can give me in that. But I know I don't need it. And it's like, it almost rights the disordered affection you might have for sweets. So instead of just craving it and eating it, it's like, I want this.
That was the other thing, is if you give something up for a time, you're able to better appreciate it when you have it back. So like if you, and you might not even, this might be an instance where just giving up chocolate, that shouldn't be all you do. But if you want to do that, maybe this is a good thing, is just you give up chocolate and then you go 40, however many days it is, because it's not technically 40.
Like 46?
You go however many days without eating it, and then you taste it again, and maybe you don't even want it anymore. Because I've had that happen with sugar stuff a lot of times, where I don't eat it for an extended period and I try it again. It's like, I don't even want to eat that because it's too sweet. But maybe you take a bite of it and you're like able to actually appreciate it. Similar to the caffeine that I had today, I actually feel more energized as opposed to before. It was just like getting me to my base level, because I had such a disordered relationship with caffeine, where it was like I was just dependent on it, and every single day I needed at least one energy drink just to get me to my base operating level. And so after having exponentially less, if I have an energy drink today, I actually feel the effects of it, and I'm able to actually appreciate the energy that it is giving me, as opposed to before. It was just like I needed to have it just because I needed to have it, and it was like I wanted to just be able to function But that's not good. There's nothing really. I mean, maybe I'm just missing something, but I feel like there isn't really anything where you should be that dependent on it to any extent.
Water, but
Well, sure.
Food.
That's
Warm,
sure.
yeah.
Shelter,
But-
clothes.
But yeah, like in a similar vein, it's like part of Exodus was giving up watching stuff, and so I was like, no YouTube, unless it was like directly applicable towards my school. Like I did not watch YouTube except on Sundays, and sometimes I was like, well, I can watch stuff, so I got to watch this, and that, and it was just like, oh, I got to get my fill before I can't have it, and so like the Sundays is like, well, that didn't really work out, but now I'm like today I got back from class, I'm like, I have another 2 hours of grading I need to do, but you know what? I'm going to take 15 minutes, set a timer, and I'm going to watch a video, and I'm like, I'll limit myself in that way, and then it's just like a nice relaxant before I can go take my do my grading, and then that was nice because like, well, I didn't sit and continue watching it for the next 40 minutes, and then another 2 hours, and then until it was morning. But like I used that, and it's like, okay, so now I can appreciate, like I do appreciate watching like cool stuff on YouTube. And there were times throughout Lent and Exodus where I was like, I just kind of want to like watch this, or someone mentioned a cool video, it's like, oh, that sounds so cool, I can't watch that until Sunday, or it's like, I want to watch that to share that with you, and it's like I can appreciate that now. Or as we were talking about earlier, alcohol, like I never really drink alcohol. It's like I don't really
I was
care
gonna
for
say,
it.
we should have a glass of wine for one of these episodes.
We should.
We
Totally
I'll buy some
honestly.
wine, but like
Are
I
you
don't.
guys done with Exodus?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So we can
Should have
do
brought
that
some
now.
tonight.
Let's do it
Yeah.
next week.
but like I don't drink alcohol normally. It's like I don't really care for it too much. But then there were enough times in Exodus where it's like there was a group going out to the pub, and it's like, hey, you want to come? It's like, oh, I kind of want to come and like just hang out with you guys and have a drink. It's like that had never really been a thing before. I was like, that sounds dumb. Like, why would I go to a bar and spend a lot of money on alcohol? But it's like to just go have a drink and hang out with people. It's like that. I can appreciate that now, and not being able to do it helped me appreciate that more. And so there's mortifications like that I think just helps you better appreciate the purposes of things.
So when you guys do Exodus 90, it doesn't feel like a burden?
Oh, it does sometimes. I'm not gonna lie.
Does
Like,
it make it feel like your relationship with God is a conditional one almost, where it's like I gotta measure up, I gotta.
Tornado warning.
Is it hail?
No, tornado.
There's no siren yet, so
Well, we're fine.
we're good.
You want to go up a flight?
Go up higher.
We'll go sit on the roof. I think that for me, oh my gosh, bro.
It's a warning, not a watch. Wait, warnings are worse.
Warning is worse.
I never remember because tornado watch makes me think, oh, watch for the tornado. It's right there. It's like, no, warning's worse. Warning, there's a tornado coming.
There will be a siren though if we like.
Yeah,
actually-
it's a thing that it just means that there's some clouds that can do
Yeah.
stuff.
Um,
Was Exodus a burden?
Okay. So I don't know. It depends because
Hopefully a truck's
I think
super
there were
fun.
definitely times where I
Yeah, sure.
would feel it more, and I would be like, I want to eat sweets, or I'm going out, I want to have a drink, or I want to have caffeine, or I want to watch something, or play a game, or get on Instagram, whatever, and let you do all these things, and you can't do it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do that thing. That's really annoying. But I don't think it ever made me feel like my relationship with God was conditional, because the way I think of it is, if you think of it like a human relationship, even in the most intimate, most loving relationships, like you have standards and you have boundaries and you have all that stuff. And it's not like there are rules to loving somebody, but at the same time, there has to be an understanding of your relationship, and there has to be a degree of respect for the relationship and your position in the relationship. So that was another thing I wanted to get into, was your position in the relationship, because your relationship, if you're married, your relationship with your wife is different than if you're a kid, your relationship with like your dad. Like there's different kinds of loving relationships, and there's the siren.
There's the sirens.
Sometimes your dad will ask you to do things you don't want to do, not because that's a condition for his love, but because he understands that your desire for that thing...
We don't have a basement here, so...
He understands that your desire for that thing isn't necessarily ordered properly. So if your dad says you can't have a cookie after dinner, it's because, like, if you could have a cookie whenever you wanted to, you would just eat cookies all day long, and he knows you shouldn't do that. And that doesn't mean... Him telling you that doesn't mean he loves you any less. And him asking you to not do that thing is actually because he loves you more. So even though it's annoying, I guess for me it felt like there's a lot of things that I do or eat or drink or whatever where they're not bad things, but maybe you do it too much, and too much of anything is a bad thing. Well, not anything, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I never thought of it like that. That wasn't really my experience with it. And yeah, it was annoying a lot but that's only because it forces you to look at your own kind of insufficiencies. And like whenever you have to look at your flaws, like that's a painful thing to do. If you just have to admit that I have a problem, that in and of itself is painful. And then actually working to fix that problem is even more painful. So... Is that a car?
That was a car.
Okay. Bro, it's scary. Right now.
You guys want to pause? We can.
My heart is racing. No. But yeah, I'm so distracted right now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Like there's a
I don't know
tornado breaking down the building.
I don't know if
now.
any of that made sense.
It did.
But
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to that. Just like it didn't. It definitely was a burden at times because it's hard. But it never felt like a conditional thing.
Yeah.
Like I was doing it because I chose to do it and I stuck with it. But in those times when I was like, I just want to watch YouTube. I was like, why is this shower so cold? I'm not like, I have to do this so Jesus will love me. I'm like, the thought even crossed my mind. Is that thing still going on with the alert being on? And I don't know to check. Sorry. Oh, it isn't.
No.
Pause.
I got it.
I should have. I just assumed that thing was going to disappear. It's not going. All right. Well, it's fine. The video just missed the tornado that passed through. 100%. That's what happened.
Yeah, there was an alert. It made the camera stop. Hopefully, you're still watching.
Yeah. but yeah, whenever I was like, oh, I'm taking this cold shower and it's annoying. And it's like, my mind went to like, and when I get the warm shower, I'm like, I'm going to thank Jesus for this. And it's like, it's not a conditional thing. Like, I know I don't need to do that to be a good Christian or this or that. So while it was a burden because it was hard, it was a growth moment, but not a necessary thing to do, I think is how I would say it. Yeah.
Speaking of things being a burden.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can talk about how doing SPIRE, basically, hopefully, kind of, sort of, every day during Lent went for
How
both of
did
you
that
go? Because if anybody doesn't know, that was our goal. We said at the beginning of Lent we were going to do SPIRE every single day, and that was our goal as a group, to try and do that, just as kind of a personal challenge, so that we're practicing what we preach on here.
Yeah. So how is the daily SPIRE thing? I guess Michael asked the question, so we'll answer it first.
I'll be honest. Okay. I would say I'm not a big planner guy. I've never really I think it's valuable, but it's more of something that helps me reflect.
Yeah.
Like Michael, you said that earlier. I don't know, we weren't recording.
St. Peter's Church in
The
St.
new
Charles.
place? Yeah, I saw those posts.
It's like 20.
It'll be there.
Because we're in the chat
I
now.
look. Yeah.
Hang on. There's the second one.
All right.
You want to try to finish it by 7?
Yeah.
Sure.
If possible.
Okay.
You would talk about SPIRE stuff.
So,
You're not a planner guy. You use it as a reflection.
it's a really great reflection tool, but I've never really been. The way that I see it is that using the SPIRE as a tool for a daily plan is like a really solid way to do it. I just need to be better about actually planning my day.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I'm not, I wasn't very, I had things that I did every day that had to do with SPIRE,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the one that I struggled with the most was the evangelizing one.
Yeah.
Because it's all meant to go into where you're like sharing the faith or in some way sharing love.
Mm-hmm.
But that was hard to do and hard to figure out like a specific example
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
Like I could kind of come up with some, which I guess is the point because it helped me to think
Yeah.
about it more.
Yeah.
And so I would think more often about, like it definitely made me think, okay, I should probably work out more. And so I did more workouts because I wanted to keep the physical one checked. Okay. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, it was good. I used it a lot as a reflection of like looking back, okay, how did my day go? Where could I improve?
I think it's better as a reflection
Yeah.
because some of them, it's like if there's like for physicals, like, yeah, you can plan out workouts and you can do those things. There's more to physical than just working out, but like you can plan that. Spiritual, like you can plan prayer things. And you could technically plan relational stuff. It's like, oh, I need to call this person or go out and do this with that person. But something like evangelization, that's an experience that is in the moment. It's like, I'm going to plan on evangelizing today. That won't necessarily work out because how will you evangelize? Because that depends entirely on the moment.
But also, I bet it would work better if you were, maybe I'm not the best example just because I haven't gotten that discipline yet to plan out my days. But if I had to, I bet if you sat down and it was sectioned out better, like that would really help. It'd help you avoid kind of falling into the trap of my life is really about my work. And then I do this and I do this.
Yeah.
Because it is mapped out in a way that it focuses on you as a person. And like if you were planning for the next day, like it'd be easier because then you go, okay, I don't have anything for evangelizing tomorrow. But what can I do with intentionality that I wouldn't normally do? Which is really what the point is, why it's there.
What could I do such that tomorrow when I write down my evangelization that I have something to do? Because I know that I won't. It's like, is this something that I could make happen? I could see that in terms of planning.
Yeah.
In terms of intentionality, not like make it happen. It's like, I need to talk to you about Jesus.
Yes.
That might work with some people.
But like evangelization would be acts of service.
Yes.
Yeah,
and things that you would have to plan out. And maybe the only reason that you didn't do the almsgiving is because it wasn't a plan ahead.
Yeah, that was my thing. It's like I didn't plan ahead for that. I was like, well, I'll look into things, and then I was busy a lot of days doing stuff that I had already planned and all that. And then it's like, well, I just never was like, oh, I definitely have a free weekend, and so it's like I'll think about stuff then. It's like that never really happened. Where I was like, I definitely can do it now. But yeah, but it's definitely that planning.
I think going forward also, I don't know how you did it, or either. I think you wrote it down like physically.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to keep on trying to do it every day, and I'm going to try and physically write it down with a pen, because I tried to do it on my phone, and that was just your phone is such a distracting little piece of metal and glass. It's like if you try and do anything truly productive on there, it's so hard. So I think also having something separate, so maybe you have a notebook or like you have a journal, that also would help a lot.
Yeah.
But I do, as much as I want to just say, that I should use it as a reflection because like that's what works for me. I think you're right. Because like I'm thinking about it now, and like every day I probably could have thought of something that fit 4 out of the 5 of them. Maybe one day I miss physical or evangelical or whatever. But at the end of the day, like you're saying, there are a lot of things where you have to plan them. And if you don't plan them, you're just not going to do them. And then you look back and you're like, why didn't I do that? And it's like, oh, well, there was this thing. This is kind of unrelated, but not, I mean, I can tie it in. I saw a quote and it was something like, people worry about going back in time to change something small and messing up the future, but nobody ever thinks about the fact that doing something small in the present could change the future. And I was like, and thinking about that in relation to this, it's like if you think about just writing down tomorrow, or not tomorrow, maybe a week from now, if you want to plan ahead that far, you're going to do some kind of volunteer work. Maybe you're going to plan out a time to do something evangelical. Like that little thing might actually lead to you doing, and that's not to say you're not going to do stuff in the moment, because like I've had conversations with people and I've been working on the podcast and I count that as even evangelizing. I can't speak. And I've had, religious, faith-based, spiritual conversations with people, and I've tried to deepen my own faith and help other people with theirs. And it's like that all happens, but there are days, on the days where I don't do it, it's like, oh, I just didn't have an opportunity. And the opportunity isn't always just going to present itself, and sometimes you have to create the opportunity, and you're not going to create the opportunity if you don't go out of your way to do it. So I think going forward, I want to physically write it down, but I also think I'm not going to make the excuse anymore that I'm just going to use it as a reflection, because I think if you really want to make the most of it and you want to get the most out of it, you don't have to plan it ahead, but I think that that's the way to get the most out of it. Yeah. The more I listen to us talking about it.
I can see that.
I don't know.
Yeah, for me, like the thing I was best at was writing it down, because I said I would do it, and so I did it. This was like every night, because I was writing a daily journal, because I do that during Lent, and so it's like I physically wrote down SPIRE and did that, and you saw that in the previous videos. And so like, yeah, because if I could set myself to do something, it's like I have something tangible that I need to do, and I need to make sure I go to bed 10 minutes earlier in order to do that. I can do that most of the time, and I was still even able to get the 8 hours of sleep most of the time. And so like that type of discipline I'm good at, in terms of, well, I need to do this, and so like the check off the box type of discipline I'm fairly good at, so long as I commit myself to it. I can. The only thing that would like break me off of that discipline is my mind convincing myself that I shouldn't continue doing that because it's a waste of time or this or that. And it has to like logical arguments what break me away from those habits. I mean, day-to-day failures happen, but like then I would be like, well, I got to get back into it, unless I was like, well, it's not working out for me for this or that reason. But there were a number of times, especially towards the end, where I started thinking about it less, and just like looking back on the day, last couple of days, I was like, I had nothing for evangelical, I had nothing for intellectual. It's like I just like dashed nothing there.
It's like you just do that, and then because this is my experience, you do that, and then you're like, oh, I'll do better tomorrow, and it's like you don't make any plan for tomorrow, and you do the same exact thing.
I guess I didn't even think about that. That was my whole perspective. I was like, well, I basically do this stuff like each day anyway, da 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 da.
It'll be easy.
But then, like, it would be ideal. I feel like if you're gonna plan, like if you have things you have to do tomorrow, it'd be nice if you had like a SPIRE, if like there was a big section
product
for
idea.
each category.
Subsections in each category. It's like you don't need to do everything in the subsections, but it's like in spiritual you've got like, well, types of prayer, or like experiences, or this or that. Physical is like working out, enjoying something, doing this. Intellectual is like thinking about something, absorbing something, listening to someone or something like that. And just like subsections with like, there are ideas for what you can do in it. in a practical way. Is that what you're
I
saying?
wasn't thinking
Okay,
like
that's what I was
it
saying.
having ideas.
Sorry.
Which is a good, I mean, that's true. I think that there would be good example pages you could have, but like I'd want it to be where, like, if you open your book, you're like, okay, I have stuff I have to do tomorrow. I have to go do this, and I have to go do this, and I have to go do this. Where do those 3 things fit?
Mm-hmm.
And then you fill it
Oh.
out in each one, and then you're like, okay, what am I missing, and what can I do tomorrow to
Okay,
fill in
okay.
these spots? So then it's not like, okay, I've got to do my SPIRE plan and then my real daily
Yeah.
plan, because
Okay.
your daily plan should just be morphed. Like, it should just be, the SPIRE is just supposed to help round it all out.
Mm-hmm. So things
that's
like,
what I didn't-
well, I know I have classes tomorrow, and I've got time, and I want to go on a run tomorrow. So it's like
Mhm.
these things, and it's like, okay, so I'm going on a run tomorrow, so that'll be able to check off physical. These classes is like I'll try to be intentional in the classes and ask good questions. Like that can be intellectual, and it's like, well, is there anything particular I could do in prayers? Like I could do my regular daily stuff. And it's like, oh, I can go to mass, so I can, and then just things like, well, I just have to wake up at 6:45 to go to a 7:15 mass, so I can manage that. Just a little less sleep tonight. It's like, okay, I can fill in the spiritual, and just to plan the next day is like, well, these are the things I know I have to do. That connects to those, and then it's like, well, is there something I can do evangelical? It's like, well, I've got some time here, and it's like, what can I do in that way that can fill it out?
Yeah, that's where I feel like it
Okay.
would work the best.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But I never really did it that way.
I do a lot of like planning my next day mentally before I go to bed. Sometimes, especially with Exodus stuff, because I made myself get 8 hours of sleep. So I'm like, okay, well, if I want to go to mass in the morning, because I have a 9 o'clock class, I don't want to go to the 8 o'clock mass that rushes me. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to 7:15 mass, in which case I need to wake up at 6:45 to be able to get there on time. And then it's like, okay, so that means I need to go to bed by 10:45. I need to be like under the sheets, closed eyes by 10:45 to get 8 hours of sleep. And so like that sort of type of planning has really beneficial to me, because like that actually means I'm disciplined and like can get to mass in the morning, or I can do this, or I can actually go run instead of being like, I really love running. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to plan on running in this time frame in which I know I have time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really beneficial, but I never really thought about like, well, what else can I add to fulfill the SPIRE stuff? 'Cause
Yeah,
I was
We
like,
should make one of those.
I know. I don't know how.
that's difficult.
We
So,
You have to find a printer,
could do that.
do bulk.
well, oh, you wanted to make like booklets?
I
Like
work
a
on
daily
that.
journal that
Yeah.
I would actually use.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't. First of all, I don't like the little notebooks.
Yeah.
I want like a big one that's got like a calendar in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those things exist.
Imagine having like a big one where we should talk about this after.
Yeah,
Instead
it's
of
been a
talking
lot
about
of
it
time.
here, but it's like you have almost like it's like a book, but it's also a calendar, and you have a page, or not a page, maybe a section for every day of the year even, and you can just like write stuff down. And if you want to plan 2 days ahead, maybe you can plan 2 days ahead.
Well, because people like business, like people that like have a lot going on, that is what they do.
Yeah.
I'm just still.
So
haven't done
the
it.
making our own, the difficulty there would be.
We should talk about this
Yeah.
after.
Well, yes, but the difficulty
That's
there
fine.
would be the things to write down. So I think the best way to do that, to start, is to just like get a large notebook type thing, or
Okay.
a calendar journal, and
I want to get a calendar.
write,
journal.
this is what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yes.
Or you can plan a whole week in advance or whatnot. But like, I need to get a run in tomorrow. I need to do this tomorrow. I need to do that tomorrow.
Yes, that you can check off.
And then you check it off throughout the day. And then
I've heard, yeah,
you can
that's been
add stuff
good.
at the end of the day. But like, that I think would be a good way of getting started on it. Because like, I don't know how to do it. It's like, get a calendar journal and try it. And it hurts.
You could
It's
also
hard.
have like 5 pages in the beginning, and it has like a page for spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, evangelical, and it has examples. Just like if you're trying to think of
Yeah.
things
Oh, that's actually
as
really
you're
nice.
doing
Yeah,
it.
Like,
that
at
would
the
be
And
nice.
then
front.
it's like, I
Yeah.
can't think of anything evangelical that I can do. And it's like, maybe you should go, I don't know,
Pick up.
do whatever.
Homeless
We should do an evangelical one again where we can
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
a good
then we've
idea.
got a
We should
good,
talk about that
good
Yeah.
plan
after.
for moving forward. That's
Yeah.
what I'm going to try to do too. Is
Yeah.
use it as a way to plan for the day ahead.
Mhm.
To be intentional with with my time.
Yeah. But so we've talked a lot about Lent, and I don't know how much longer we want to keep this going, but I just want to talk a little bit about Easter. You know, it's like the whole lead up to Lent was Easter.
Yeah, we didn't.
We are now in. Well, it's fine. We talked good stuff, but it's like now we're in Easter. Like, what is there a difference now? Like, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on Easter?
I don't know how do I say this. I'll just say it. So I think this is a very kind of personal, spiritual thing, I guess. I don't know if this is a common thing. I felt like Holy Week for me was really, really hard and really, really difficult, and I was struggling with a lot. Like the stuff that I've been working on all Lent and some of the stuff I've been doing really well with. For some reason, all of Holy Week, I was just like not feeling it, and I was just...
Because the end was so close, and it's like,
I don't know what it was about it, but... And maybe that's a spiritual thing. Maybe the devil works harder during Holy Week because he knows it's coming.
Definitely.
But so all of Holy Week, I was just struggling really, really hard. And it was just like every day was a struggle. And I felt like I could not catch a break. And it was really interesting because yesterday...
This was Easter.
Yeah, yesterday. Sorry. Yesterday was Easter. Today is Monday. Yesterday was Sunday. It felt yesterday like, again, this is just a spiritual thing. I don't know if everybody feels like this, but I did, where it kind of felt, at least in the morning, when I first wake up, I just felt very kind of rejuvenated and very... I felt like a little bit of the weight had been lifted off of me. And an example was I was supposed to get up at like 7 to be able to go pick up my grandma for Mass. And then the Mass we were going to go to got pushed back like 2 hours. And so we were going to go to a different Mass. And then I came upstairs and my brother was like, we're not going to that Mass anymore. And my mom said the same thing. And I was like, oh, that's fine. And they were like, oh, I totally thought you were going to be upset about that. And if that had happened the day before, I guarantee I would have been so mad. And I would have been like, I could have slept for 2 hours and been all whatever. But I didn't feel the tension or the angst or any of the stress or whatever that I had been feeling all week. And I just felt very, I don't know. I felt like the weight had been lifted a little bit. And that didn't necessarily last all day, but definitely just... You know, as the day is getting going, as I'm kind of like reflecting on everything, it's not just symbolic. Like, I think we need to always remember that. The Easter's not just a day where we're like, oh, this thing happened 2,000 years ago, and, you know, we're just going to remember that, and it's like all, whatever, it makes you feel good, it's happy, Easter bunny, and, you know, colored eggs. Like, it's not symbolic exclusively. Sure, there's some symbolism, whatever, but
it's real.
I feel like maybe this is just me, but I feel like we always forget that in some senses the spiritual world and all of that is infinitely more real than everything that we experience here in the physical world. And there's like stuff going on that you can't see, that you can't understand. And it's real. Like the effects of things like the crucifixion, the resurrection, that's not just some crazy event that happened 2,000 years ago. That like has real tangible effects in your life now, like today, if you let it.
Yes.
And I think, again, like I said, I didn't last all day, but when I woke up, I was so much more aware of that, I think. And just thinking, I've been struggling so much all week. And then you think about the crucifixion. It's like this event that kind of is the summary of all of our suffering. And it's like Jordan Peterson says, it's technically the most like horrible, painful story that you could possibly imagine. And you go from that to the resurrection, which is Jesus conquering all the death and the suffering and the pain. And then it's so easy to just forget what that actually means and the fact that that has real effects in your life. Like, it doesn't have to. You can like stop that. You can prevent it if you turn away from it, if you ignore it. But
Actually, you can't stop it.
well, you can't stop it, but you can
ignore it.
You can ignore it, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah.
Is there could be, Jesus is chasing after you, and he wants to give you eternal life, essentially. He wants to help you conquer your pain, and he wants to help you to overcome death. And that was the other thing that you said something earlier about. It wasn't me, like I wasn't doing it. Good things happen to me. Like, we can't do it on our own, and Jesus is there. He conquered death, and he's there to help us do the same thing and to do the same thing for us. And I don't know. I'm talking a lot, but it's not symbolic. Easter is not just symbolic. It's a real thing. And I don't remember if it was on the podcast or if it was something else. We were talking about, it was the Bible in a year. I don't know if you were there, but we were talking about how God is timeless, and how we were talking about it in the context of the Transfiguration, and somebody was saying something about how Jesus and Moses and Elijah at different times all went up to the top of the same mountain, and it's like somebody was saying, like, what if it was actually all at the same time, kind of thing, whatever. But we forget that God is a timeless God, and he is the same now as he was 2,000 years ago. And the effects of the crucifixion, the resurrection, now are exactly the same as they were 2,000 years ago. And it's so easy to forget that, and it's so easy to think that it's all just symbolic and pictures and books and stories, and you hear it at Mass, and, you fold your hands and whatever. I feel like that's such an easy trap to fall into.
That is actually, I believe, the main trap. That's the only trap.
Well,
that was the first trap he laid, which was, he's not really real. And he's like, that was like the number one lie. And what I learned this Lent was, what it all really comes down to is, so there's a scripture that says, if you ask for something in prayer and believe that you have received it, it is yours. That's in Mark. If I really believed that, then everything that I asked for and I believed, it was mine. And of course, it's like, it's not a real prayer if I just say, I want $1 million. That's not a real prayer. We're talking a prayer it's a communication of your deepest heart with God is what a prayer is. And so when you know how to do that and you practice that, which is why they tell you to pray all the time, then when you ask for a grace, like if you would say, Jesus, save me from this fear. If I believe I've been saved from that fear, and I really believe it, it is true that I've been saved from the fear, because that's what he did. He already did it. But our journey is just believing it, like just coming to believe. Yeah. That's all it is. And so then a saint is someone that just believes it. And
it's crazy.
It is crazy, because the number one thing that stops us is just a lie that we believe more than what we think we believe. Because it's like, if I believe that floor is there, then I'll just step there, and then I can walk in the other room. But if you ask me, is the floor there? And I'm like, oh yeah. But when it comes down to it, I don't really believe the floor's there, then I'm not going to walk. And then that room I can never get to. Yeah. And that's inherently what I really believe. Yeah. And so the whole journey, this whole thing is just not believing any lies, but not believing things that change, like my feelings or my thoughts or my opinions or the way I see the world, which is, a symbol is some sort of weird, abstract, disconnected thing, but it's like got its own reality, so I respect it. It's like, no, this is either real or it's not real. Yeah. And we have such a we have no idea for those things to be real. But the people that that you come in contact with that believe it, it's like, that's a different person. Like, it when you talk to them. And one of the things that stood out to me is that the word symbol comes from a Greek word, or the Greek word for symbol or whatever, means two rivers interconnecting and becoming one. So a symbol is not like here's a reflection of a sort of image of something that you can't really see. It's like a symbol is where there's a spiritual reality that meets and marries a physical reality, and that's literally what it is.
Jonathan Pageau says something about how a symbol is essentially a lower physical truth that points towards a higher spiritual truth, and it's kind of the same thing. Is that?
It's a similar concept.
It's a similar concept. It's not exactly.
It focuses on different things, but
I guess it probably depends what you mean by symbol.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't need to get into that really.
whole video on
But
symbols.
that's probably a more well-rounded way of, yeah, basically I would say that's probably more accurate. The way where I meant it was literal is that the Eucharist is not,
Okay.
maybe
yeah.
it's better to say the Eucharist is not just a symbol. A symbol is where two realities interconnect and it has a certain being on its own. So that picture of Mary, it's an icon of Mary, just like the Word is an icon of Jesus, but it's also His Word. So then it's also her image, but it's not her.
Yeah.
So but then a symbol would be not a symbol.
No.
The Eucharist would be the literal joining, like the marriage of those two, because that's what this whole thing is about. Like this is all about a relationship and a marriage. It is not about anything else. We just add all that stuff and we separate it all and we categorize it all so that we think we have better control and grasp of it. But it's just like when you're falling in love or you commit your life to somebody, it's like, that's not logical. Love's not logical. It's not logical that you would die and be skinned alive and burned alive because you're not willing to step on an icon, a picture. That's not logical, but that's the rawest, truest form of love. That's why divorces are at an all-time high. That's why nobody's getting married. That's why there's no religion. It's because it's like, well, logically, this doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make any sense why I would do that. I'm not doing it. And then the world falls apart because we've lost the point, which is that you're in a relationship with a mystery. That's what it is about.
think also people think that that's impossible. I think you hear, especially in the broken, just depressed, anxiety-filled world that we live in, people hear us sit here and say, like, it's about a relationship with God, and they're like, I don't know what that means. But even if I knew
Right.
what that meant, I don't think that's possible. And I think that's probably the biggest problem, is just that people don't even
Honestly,
think it's
yeah.
possible.
That's
And
where I was last
'cause
year.
I was thinking about this the other day. And I wrote it down on my phone because I was like, that's a good thought. And I want to remember that. But I can't remember exactly what the thought was. But it was something along the lines of, is it more likely that the people who believe that they can have a relationship with God have been indoctrinated into believing a lie, or into believing the lies of a religion that promises them impossible things? Or is it more likely that the people who don't believe that it's possible to have a relationship with God have been indoctrinated into believing the lies of a world that tells them that there are impossible things to begin with? And that was really convoluted, but I really like it because I think that we see people
you flip
who
it
are
on
like,
its head.
yeah, we see people who believe fully, as fully as you can. Like, you see the most joyful, happy people, and you're like, I can't feel that. Like, that's impossible for me to reach that level. It's impossible for me to ever
To
attain
believe
that kind
that.
of relationship.
To believe
I don't
that that's
believe
possible.
that's possible.
That's exactly where I was a year ago, where I was like, no, I don't believe Jesus
Yeah.
loves me. I do not believe that he was really real. Like, he's real, but it's not real. Like, it's not real in the way that I need it to be real, which I can't even articulate. It's just, I know in my heart it's like, he's not real. But I tell you what, that is, step one is just being honest about that. Because the great news is that it's just a belief. Like, you don't believe something, but you can believe it with time, with grace, with spending time with God. I mean, how much time do you spend trying to get to know this reality? It's like, I don't believe Riley's a nice guy. Okay, how often have I talked to him to figure it out for myself? Well, I just hear a lot of people don't like Riley. Yeah, well, a lot of people die for Riley.
Yeah.
Well,
I would.
sorry, buddy. Apparently, if I hang out with Riley and I'm close with him, I don't get to do whatever I want, and I'm more inclined towards that right now. And that's basically what it is. So it's like, well, I promise you, if you want to believe it, it will be true. And if you don't know how to believe it, man, keep trying, because that's what this is all about.
Yeah, to bring it back to that passage from Mark that you're talking about, it's like, if you truly believe and ask, you will receive. And it's
That's a promise from God.
That's a promise from God, but it's so difficult to believe because it's just like,
because we're trying to believe with our own power.
Because then my mind goes to, well, if I truly believe and ask for something just completely, utterly stupid, and it's like, well, that clearly isn't going to happen.
That's impossible. You don't
and
believe
it's like,
that it's even
well,
possible to be possible.
Yeah. It's just like, my mind goes to, it's like, well, I could ask for this completely stupid thing. And it's like, but then it's not like fully being present with God in that way. And it's like, well, if it is just being fully present with God, then how am I even asking it? Because isn't that just God saying stuff? And it's like, and there's lots of chaos that can happen through that. But then it's like, well, yeah, you got to try and work. And it's like, yeah, obviously I know I don't fully believe that in the way that like some of the saints have. And it's like, how could they do that? I don't know.
Yes, you do know.
Yes, that's true. And the reason I say I don't know is parts of those doubts that interact with all of it.
It's because the devil just said that you don't know.
Yeah.
But we're just like, oh yeah, I don't know. But then you do
It's
know.
like Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
And then we're like,
I don't know what the way is or the truth.
Yeah, but it's
I don't
like,
know where to go.
It's because we don't believe it. But it's because we allow these other thoughts to be in our mind.
Yeah. But you can fight against that through practice. Like, practice prayer and all that. And then I have noticed times in which I've asked for stuff and it has almost crazily just like happened. And I don't really think about specific examples, but like there's just times where it's like, Lord, give me the strength to do this or that, or like make this thing easier. And then I look back the next day and it's like, that was a lot easier than I was expecting it to. And it's like,
because it was a sincere prayer. Yeah.
And then I could say to myself, well, I mean, it's kind of, that could have happened anyway. It's like,
the devil could tell you that.
It's like, but it's like, yeah, sure. There's rational, normal explanations for that. But God can work through the rational just as he can through the irrational. Like,
no, God is working through the rational.
Yeah.
That's how he works.
There you go. He does work
the
through
devil
that.
says, he could just work through the rational. He is the rational.
Yeah, he also works through things that can go against our understandings of science or this or that. It's like rising from the dead is scientifically impossible. And so he can work through these.
Only as far as we understand science.
True. But he can work through these supernatural miracles. But then there's also the natural miracles of, well, there's a completely rational explanation for this. I'm like, yeah. And God set up the whole world from the very beginning of the universe to result in this miracle happening just at the right time for you. Like what coincidences, some people call like God incidences. Like God made this coincidence happen. It's like, that's very likely. It's like, yeah, it could have just been a coincidence. But also maybe God changed that proton right at the very beginning of the universe to change things just slightly enough that this thing would happen exactly when you needed it.
Okay,
because he created the universe for you. And it's like, those are the types of beliefs that's so hard to do. But it's like,
well, what about this? Imagine, what if a coincidence, calling something a coincidence, is an insult to God?
Ooh, could be.
Because if it stood out as meaningful to you, and God made everything and is in everything and has everything and everything is within him, then everything that sticks out to you in a special way is orchestrated by him. And when you call it a coincidence, you cast off his loving grace in your life and call it, this is just random luck that I just happen to psychologically like.
So if you go to the store and you randomly see like one of your best friends from high school that you haven't seen in like 6 years, like, what a coincidence that we're here today. It's like, no, you can set
that's
like, what a coincidence.
It's secular framing.
I'm so thankful for seeing you
everything
here today. That's awesome.
That's why we don't believe anything, is because we've literally got that ingrained into
Everything
us
is
of how to
random.
think.
That's what I'm saying is
Ridiculous.
I keep on hitting my mic.
I keep on grabbing mine.
we literally, I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, we literally are every single person are the people who have been indoctrinated into believing the lies of a world that tells us that things are impossible.
That's
You
literally-
can't, if you think that it's impossible that God orchestrated these things to work out the way they did,
by definition.
yeah.
Which is, but isn't it? We don't really think about that. We kind of
don't.
are just stuck.
It doesn't feel natural to think about that, but it's like,
Yeah.
or is that the devil just saying it doesn't feel natural?
That's
to think about
exactly how it
Exactly.
works. That's why it's like,
Exactly.
that's actually, I think, that's actually, I think, no, that is why they say your thoughts are not your own. You don't have to listen to them. It's because the word of God is what does not change. And so that's what should determine truth. It's not what I think or how I measure or where I compare things. It's like, okay, what does the word of God say? What is the voice of God? Because then when he says, my sheep will know my voice, it's because the more we're in tune with what he would say about this, then the closer we are to reality. And so when it is like, well, it's like, I know God could work through this. It's like, no, God does work through that. But I didn't think that, but that is what's true. And so that's now how I live. And that is what I believe is the path to freedom. That is the path to freedom.
Yeah.
See, it's so weird because we sit in this. It's not a yes or no,
Yeah.
but Jesus said, "Let your yes mean no, yes, and your no mean no. Anything else is from the evil one." So every time I'm like, well, maybe it's then that's from the evil one because it has no clarity. There's no truth. There's no back and forth. There's no.
It's ambiguous. It's misleading.
It's
at times.
it's not. It's nothingness.
It's
chaos.
confusing.
It's confusing. It's unsure of itself. It's like, but light, the way, the truth. If you follow Jesus with everything, is a yes. Like if I say yes, I mean yes, and if I say no, I mean no. And you can say I don't know, but when it comes to your yes and yes and no, that's what it should be. So it's either this is the path to freedom. This is the path to freedom I've taken. Or it's, well, I kind of think like maybe this is the path. Yeah. Then I don't even believe that. So that's not the path to freedom for me. Mm-hmm. The path to freedom for me is, I don't really know what the path to freedom is. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's like you could say yes, no, and I don't know. But you can't really just say, I don't know, maybe, yeah. It's like,
right.
Like that's just being like, yeah, pushing. It's like, I mean, yeah, there's things you don't know, and if you don't know, it's like you can admit that, and it's not bad to not know stuff.
Right.
But you can't, like, when you know that you don't know something, you can't fool yourself into thinking you might know it, and then do that. Like, I don't know, maybe it's like I know I don't know this. It's like how am I telling myself that? Well, I can explain it in this way. It's like I know I cannot do that.
Right.
So why would I try to fool myself?
You know, and that has been the biggest. That has been one of the biggest problems with. So when I'm in, you could call it spiritual direction, but really it's someone that knows how to listen to the Holy Spirit and knows love that I talk with. The problem is that I will not say yes or no, and I will not stick with what's real. Because I'm always in like this floating mode of analyzing things, and well, hypothetically, technically, if you compare it with this, physically, scientifically, spiritually, psychologically, and all of these different things, then it's like, okay, well, what's true, Fulton? I'm like, oh, well, and I can't get to the core of it.
Yeah.
But the
I had
core
that
of it is
exact
like
same
where my
experience.
person is. Like here's a hot topic, okay? It might not be the best thing that we're splitting up spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, evangelical, because it's keeping us attached in this mindset that everything is all separated instead of there being a union of all of those things. Now, of course, it's like SPIRE is the union, and it's helpful to be able to focus on certain things, but it would be real bad if we get lost, even more lost than we are now, into this separation of everything and the losing of that this is one big thing, right? And that I'm one person, and my experience is one thing, and it's not meant to be so split up, chaotic, divided. Like the devil is the spirit of division. Why do we divide everything to better understand it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's a good topic.
There have been a lot of good topics that we brought up in the last.
You should listen to the last like 20 minutes and be like, write this down. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But I think this is a great discussion.
We probably don't want to keep
This is
on going
freaking
too much longer,
beautiful.
but there's so much
This
good
is
stuff
like the
there.
main thing.
Yeah.
This is where
Mhm.
this is what my heart has been called to for the longest time.
Yeah.
Is like this truth of
Mhm.
it's either yes or it's no. And if it's yes, then everything is yes.
It's either wrong and you should ignore it completely, or it's right and you devote everything to it.
Yes.
It's-
And you
that's-
might not
with the
know,
grace
in
to
which
it.
case you ask for the grace.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
And
there is
you
this
will
middle
be given
ground.
the grace.
But you ask for the grace because you know you will get that grace to tell you which way to go.
Yes.
You know, it's like it's a stick hanging up. Is it bad or is it good? Which way does it fall? And it's like when it's hanging up, I don't know. And it's like, Lord, give me the grace to figure out where it goes. And then a gust of wind comes and blows it one way, and you're like, well, there we go. Thank you, Lord. So it's like, yeah,
And what's beautiful is if it's 52%, it's that way. That's your no.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's 51% on yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, your life gets so much more clear.
Yeah.
Because all of these games in your mind, personas, everything else, just get eviscerated because they've got no more room to live. Because your life is towards the cross.
the path is narrow. I don't know what I was trying to bring that in, but we should definitely make this a more like formal topic and discuss it in a formalized way in another video.
Yes,
I don't know how to do it.
Anyway, it's all real. That was the
It's all
point
real.
of that
It is all real. It's true.
shoot offshoot, whatever.
It's all real. This thing
Detour.
we're building up to is all real. All things point towards this spire.
And if
of
you
real-
think it's just a symbol, then I don't remember. Oh my gosh, I can't remember what saint it was. There was a saint who was talking about the Eucharist, and she said, "If the Eucharist is a symbol, then to hell with it, because I don't
Mhm.
like. Who cares at that point?
Oh.
It's not a symbol. It's all real. It's more real than anything that we were experiencing here. But we will talk about that another time, probably multiple other times, because
Many
there's a
other
lot
times.
to unpack there. Do you guys have any final concluding remarks?
My mind is confuddled, so no.
God bless you.
That's good.
I like that.
That's all I got.
Yep.
It's good. All right. Well, let's end in a prayer. Does Fulton want to lead us off?
Sure. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, help Michael to finish us off in prayer really well right now.
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Lord, thank you for bringing all three of us here today. Thank you for opening up our hearts to listen to your Holy Spirit and bringing us closer to your truth, because you are the truth. Help us to continue to knock or seek and knock and to ask for the grace to pursue you more. And help us to not only lead ourselves, but lead others towards you with everything we do every single day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. We
Thank
will
you.
see you next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Peace.
Peace
All right,
out.
Elvis.
Well, thank you very much.